So, Tom, let's start from the kind of the beginning, and by the beginning I mean the end of last season. You know, it was a nice way to end on a win against the Florida Tropics, and then into the off season the team goes. Now, kind of walk us through what happened in that off season and kind of the discussions you had with the team and the ownership and everything.
Originally, obviously we ended the season on a positive note, which is something that we wanted to do, at least with a win. We didn't make the playoffs, which was an aim, an ambitious aim, but it was an aim and a goal. I thought the players that we had were committed and they were fantastic. And I was disappointed that we didn't end up with our goal of at least making the playoffs. I think throughout the season there was probably 3 games I could pinpoint that I think should have been wins. That I think the tactic wasn't right going in, and to be transparent, sometimes the GM had a say in the tactic, and sometimes, or very few times, I did. And there was a few times where I wanted a different tactic, and I think and Peter as well, Peter Sliwa, my assistant coach and goalkeeper, we wanted to not press teams sometimes as high as we did, and I think it cost us a few games. But to end the season on a positive note was good. Look, 9-14 it's not setting the world on fire, but it's not a house fire. It's not a dumpster fire, for your first season ever. First season for me as a coach in indoor soccer, first season in indoor soccer. There was a lot there to build on. So we tried to talk with Chris, and it was hard getting him to sit down. We were initially going to take about 2 weeks off and then get back to work with a lot of different changes that we wanted to do with the franchise, not just on the field, but off the field. And finally, when I was able to sit down with him, he had already begun assembling the roster, which one of the things I had told him was that if I'm going to be the head coach, Peter's my assistant, he's the GM, decisions need to be made between the 3 of us, not just the GM. I tell people it's like being a cook. If I'm making chicken parmesan, I don't want someone who's going to buy the groceries bringing me veal. Then I'm making something totally different. So I needed to be in on that decision making. And he had said that he really wanted to step away from running the franchise from a business standpoint to coaching. And I let him know that I thought that was a mistake. Because when you're running your own business, nobody runs your business like you do. It'd be like I have United World Soccer, and it'd be like saying I don't want to do budgeting, I don't want to do ordering, I don't want to look at the marketing. I just want to go punch buttons on the cash register because that's fun. And I felt it was a mistake, but I also told him if you're going to pick the players, if you're going to decide who plays in what line and what the tactic is, it sounds like you want to coach, then you should coach the team. And I believe that. Because you can't make the decisions on the backside and then when things don't go right, run and hide and not step up and let people know that you were the one making those decisions. That kind of leaves me or any other coach out in the front to take the line of fire, so to speak. So if you want to make those decisions, step up and be the man and own those decisions. So he decided to go that way. I just went back to being United World Soccer and coaching Winter Park High School, and I was happy. I was looking forward to the start of this indoor season just as a supporter, as someone who wanted to see the franchise do well, and I did. I did want to see the franchise do well. There was a lot of players that were there that I know, that I'd worked with, and you always want success for those types of people. So I was just sat at home as a supporter and someone who was watching the SeaWolves with an interest in them doing well.
So now the season starts. Obviously, the team doesn't get off to a very good start. What are you thinking? From your seat, just seeing the team kind of the way it is.
I mean, I was disappointed, of course. I thought that there was a platform to build on. There was a core of players here that were very good players. And there was, the supporter base was there. There was a big springboard that I thought this year could have been a big year. So when it didn't start out well, I was really disappointed. I was upset. And obviously, I was watching the first game and I saw poor Yoshi go out with his head injury, and you're feeling bad for him. And I was watching the way the Tropics were assembling their roster, and I was looking around the league and looking at the player movements, and I said, man, I was talking to a few people. I said they could get off to a rough start. I said, with the players that were let go and the players they picked up, and that's kind of starting over again in a way. I always anticipated possibly it could be a rough start. Unfortunately, that came to pass.
So now, after the rough start, some things happened in December, and kind of walk us through. It is a very kind of long story, but
Yeah, I mean, everybody's seen the resignation letter that Chris stepped away because of his health, both his mental and physical health reasons. It seemed very abrupt to me. Normally, you would feel those things coming on, and you would try to put things in place so that you're not just running away very quickly. I mean, everybody has a right to take care of their health, and I would tell anybody to take care of their health, but I think there's a way to do that. And the way it happened, it left everything in a lurch. You're the guy who's the face and running the franchise, and you just up and leave. And now everybody's looking around going, what do we do? And he was the guy who was controlling everything. So quickly there was a problem, and thank goodness for guys like Andrew Haynes, who stepped up. I think the former guys that were here, and Donovan Roper and the other owners, tried to do their very best to transition this for the players back into playing as easily as they could. But once the team realized that the finances were going to be different, maintaining a lot of the players that they had was going to be impossible. And that's when I sat and I really began to worry about the franchise from the outside. I didn't want to see it go anywhere, and for the players that were here, my heart just sunk. I felt so bad for those players, but again, I was sat at home. There was nothing more I could do than to hope and pray that things worked out for the better for them.
So now, as you're sitting at home kind of thinking about the franchise, all of a sudden a call from Andrew comes in, and you guys sit down and meet, and what kind of went on in that conversation, and obviously now you're back, so what ended up leading to that decision to come back?
Well, I didn't know why he had called. I didn't know if he was calling to ask me for a sponsorship, or what was the meaning of the call. He just said, pretty quick text of, do you have time to sit down and talk with me? And I was like, yeah, sure, of course. It would give me more of an insight into, worst comes to worst, I just know more about what's going on with the SeaWolves and what I knew from sitting afar. And I was getting things from different players, but those are pieces of a story, and maybe it's not the whole story. And after we met, he asked me for help, and I just said, but how can I help you? What can I do? And he goes, can you coach? And I thought about it for a minute. We talked a little bit about some of the pros and cons. The only real con is traveling in this league is tough. That is probably the biggest con that is on the list. The stories from last year, everybody knows. I talked about him having to hop into a car from Kansas City to Milwaukee, a 7-8 hour trip overnight to play at 2:30 the next day. I just had to stand on the bench and coach. I don't even know how the players, had enough to get out there and run for, an hour-long game. I don't know how they did it, but that's hard. A lot of the places we would go, if we were, I'll never forget going. We were going to play in Kansas City, and we flew out of Clearwater to fly into St. Louis, to then drive to Kansas City, then to drive back to St. Louis, to fly back to Sanford. It was insane. I was like, what? We have a beautiful airport here. Can I just fly from Orlando International to Kansas City, who has a Kansas City International airport, and then just fly from there back to Orlando. I mean, it seems to me it'd be a whole lot easier. So the travel it's tough in this league, and it was a big con. And again, I felt like if there's anything I could do to help, and I would want to make no bones about anybody, I wasn't coming in as like the savior or anything like that. I don't view myself as that, and this is a definite tough situation. I was coming in to help provide structure both now and going forward, and really my focus is on both. We want to try to do better on the field, and we need to, but there also has to be a big plan going forward for this franchise. So that remains first, also forefront in my mind, is how we take care of this franchise moving forward. Plus, I got to tell you, when I wasn't coming back, my friends and my family were probably more disappointed than anyone. I mean, I was consoling them when I wasn't coming back. They were all, "You're not coming back?" And I'm like, "Oh no," because they all come to the games. They love going to the games. It's like a little family reunion for them. So it was a way to get my family together, and they were really disappointed that I wasn't coming back. So when I told them that I was coming back, it was a massive celebration, and they're all going to be there on Friday night. So the choice to come back was based on what could I do to help the franchise now, to stabilize and to help it move into the future.
So now, for your perspective now, obviously working with this team, it's not quite the same team you had before, and there's some familiar faces, some new faces, and some faces that have moved on to other places. How do you as a coach kind of handle all of that constant rotation and movement?
Yeah, it's been tough, as you've seen from the results. And first, any player that left, I understand. And everybody, your career is short when you're playing professional sports, and they've got to do the very best thing for them and for their family that they can. But for the players that chose to stay, my utmost respect, because they knew what they were staying for was going to be a tough situation. And walking back in that first training session and seeing the few bodies that we had was tough. But we're staying positive. We're adding more players, and that's just the thing that I hope everybody understands, is that it was kind of like starting over. Once December 22nd hit, which was a great night actually, the team beat the Baltimore Blast, and that's always a feather in your cap. I've always called the Baltimore Blast like the Cadillac of this league. I mean, they're a well-run, fantastic franchise who've won the most championships in this league. So I always have a massive ton of respect for the franchise. So to get a win against them was just fantastic. But once that happened, it was shut down. Everything stopped. The training stopped. The playing stopped. There was no games. The roster was somewhat disassembled. So when I come back in January, it's picking up the pieces. It's helping Andrew, and the players that were here were fighting a battle hard. So I had to do my bit to try and help bring in some players to try to add and bolster the roster. But at the same time, when you're not playing, your match fitness goes away. So that first game in Kansas City, I should have remembered and I should have known, but I didn't realize it till Eduardo leans over to me. He goes, "We haven't done anything since December the 22nd, outside of the couple training sessions we had leading up." And I kind of, it hit me in that moment, standing on the bench. I'm like, "Of course you haven't. There hasn't been anybody to lead training sessions, and the players have all gone in different directions." We were meeting players. I was meeting players in the airport on Thursday that didn't train with us, that were going to play with us on Friday night. So to go and have I would say a good quarter. We won the first quarter, and we were close at the half. Was good, and then the wheels completely fell off the bus. I mean, you could see it, and fitness went, and they started scoring a lot of goals, and I just think it became too much for players to handle. And then you got to turn around and play the Florida Tropics, who, again, right now, you'd have an argument not saying, you'd have a hard argument for me if somebody said they're not the best team in the league, because I think they're pretty much right there. And we kept the game manageable going into the fourth quarter, and then it got away from us. And then, this past game, just transitionally, we were just played off the floor by, again, a very good team. And we're still trying to put pieces together. I would say it kind of feels like preseason for us, and other teams are well into their season. They're halfway through, and we're kind of at the beginning point. So we got a long gap to make up that we have to do that very, very quickly.
So I guess the last question I'd have for you is, for fans and then kind of their expectations for this team, what would you kind of tell them coming to the home games? You still have a number of home games left. What would you tell them for the rest of the season?
I'll tell you, if you take a look at our schedule, it's pretty tough. And I think if you're looking around the league and you're paying attention to the league, there is so much more parity than there was last year. I mean, you look at the Baltimore Blast and where they are in the standings, and they're still a great team with great players. You look at what Florida's put together and where they are, and the Milwaukee Wave are still strong despite missing a few really key players, but still a very strong franchise. You look at Kansas City's gotten better. You look at St. Louis, they've gotten better. They're beating the Wave. I mean, there's so much parity in our division. Utica's still good. Harrisburg continuing to get better. That we're going to be up against it most nights. We're definitely the underdog coming in, and the guys are going to fight. They're going to do everything they can. We had a good session today, and we're hoping to have 2 more good sessions. So every session we hope to get better and better and better. And that's what I would tell everybody. Hopefully every game for us gets better and better and better. And we talked this morning about the importance that the people we play for are sitting in those stands. They're our supporters. You have to do your best for them, because they're always doing their best for you. So that's not anything that's lost on me ever. As long as I'll be here or doing something like this, we play for them, and they're going to know that, and they're going to respond to that. So we're looking for just to get better and better and better, and we hope that everybody sticks with us and is along for the ride and watches us get better and better and better.
Thanks, Tom.